Right, so in this video, we're looking at how do we break up this geometry into reasonable sized logical chunks. And this is a nice straightforward process here, but it's going to maybe introduce a couple of pretty cool nodes. So first of all, we're going to run extract centroid, which is going to run over connected pieces, which we know are defined by the attribute class. So there we go. We now have a point, which is the center of each of these rocks. And we also know which class this point belongs to. So we know by association which point belongs to which rock. So then what we can do is we can go and find a nice node called cluster. And this cluster node expects points to be fed as an input, and it's going to perform a clustering operation. But visually we didn't see anything change. So first of all, let's just make sure that we can actually see the output of this operation. We're going to do that simply by coloring the points randomly according to the cluster attribute. So there we go. We can now see that we've got a few clusters. We have how many? 10 clusters. And this would basically be saying that we're going to group together all of these points by their position. And currently this is operating entirely based off of the position. So if we set the clusters to 50, then that means that we're basically grouping all of the boulders in this landscape tile into 50 chunks or 50 discrete meshes. And I think this is probably a good number. It's still quite a lot, but it's going to play nicely with Unreal systems. We have smaller chunks to send back and forth, and it's easier to kind of go in and spot fix like a specific area if you know that you just want to go and make some changes to this sort of collection. Probably as well, at this sort of scale, we're going to end up with reusable pieces that we can then manually kit bash other parts of the environment together with if we wanted to. So how do we transfer these clusters back over to the source geometry? Well, that's very simple. We can just put down an attrib copy. So this is the geometry we want to copy the attributes to. That's the rocks. And the points are the geometry that we want to copy the attributes from. Okay, so, oh, sorry, the centroid there, that's not correct. It's actually the geometry there. Okay, so how are we going to copy these attributes? Well, we're going to copy them according to the matching class attribute. Class attribute, there you go. So we're going to say match by attribute class. And we want to copy the attribute of name, CD, but also cluster. Now, the fact that we're not already seeing the color coming through says that we're copying something, there's something wrong in our copying setup. So let's have a look at the warning. When it says invalid attribute specification class, well, we're trying to copy from points to points. But at the moment, our class attribute on the rocks is a primitive attribute. So quite simply, need to promote the class attribute from points to primitives so that the attrib copy can now copy these over. Primitives to points. And now we will get that copying. And because we're also copying the color, we can see that we're getting these clusters visually displayed. And this is fine, but I think these clusters are actually totally okay. But we can try to make the clustering algorithm a little bit smarter. So, and we can do that by making it consider other aspects than just the position of these chunks. So let's go and what do I mean by that? Well, if we go to these rocks, like so, we see that they all have a normal. And what could be quite interesting is if we can get the average normal of the rock, so the facing direction of the rock. So let's go ahead and transfer that normal attribute. And this is going to be trying to transfer that normal attribute from the primitive. So what we need to do is we need to promote the normal from the point to the primitive. And if it doesn't exist yet, that's actually fine, because we can just go ahead and add the normals to the primitive right off the bat. So we put down a normal node, we put it onto the primitive. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to go to my guides and increase the normal scale. But you can see that we now actually have a normal direction for all of these rocks on the primitives. And then each kind of rock here has actually got, each point has one of these normals passed over to it. And so if we go to the clustering operation, and we can look at the actual final outcome here, and if we go to the clustering operation and add another control attribute, which is the normal, we should be able to see that we can guide this selection process a little bit differently, where if we weight the normal higher than the position, we can do all sorts of weird things which are not ideal, where groups of rocks with similar average facing directions get grouped together. But what we really want is to have some kind of mix of the position and the facing direction, and this will allow us to get even more kind of sensible groupings in theory of these elements, where you want them to be logically close to each other, but also group things with similar facing directions. So if we were to increase the number of clusters now to 200, what I would expect to see is that we would get the cliffs kind of being represented as pieces, and then where the angle changes, you get these breaks, and that's nice. So if you were willing to have 200 individual meshes to describe all your cliffs, you could of course set the clusters to 200, but this is kind of overkill for me personally. I think I'm going to set to 50, maybe even 25. I think that's probably starting to get too big, so we're going to go back to 50, and let's even go for 100. Because really, if you're dealing with things procedurally, the total number of meshes isn't that important with Nanite, specifically with Nanite. So we're going to go with this, and the final step now is going to be sort of exporting these all and re-importing them into Unreal.